Welcome Sagittarius to your in-depth monthly forecast for June 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month. This is going to give us a backdrop for how things are going to start to unfold from the start of the month. You do have a collective of energy in your opposite sign of Gemini, which is an air sign, very much about communication, quick communication. You also have some energy in house 6, practicalities. Mercury is very aligned to Uranus, the planet of unpredictability. Mars is in its home sign of Aries in your 5th house. This is terrific for really turning up the volume on your talents, but it's very close to Chiron, so I need to share that with you. And then in Pisces, which is a very emotional sign and very sensitive for you, it's house 4, you've got Neptune and the Moon very close together, but also the strict, rather more austere energies of Saturn. But it is Jupiter, your ruler, that we start this month's story with. It's just on your 7th house cusp. The 7th house is how we connect to others, how we relate. The 1st house is how we manifest our individuality. So that's obviously based on this principle, your sign. So Gemini is opposite. So it's what you're hoping to achieve in your connections to others. But it doesn't have to be just in terms of romance. So Jupiter, let's think about your ruler. It's very much about what gives you that sense of optimism, positivity, a determination to expand, to learn, download knowledge, to explore, to be independent. And of course, in traditional astrology, it is the greater benefit. So it's the key planet of fortune in the zodiac. But you also have Venus in that sign, which is the lesser benefit, still very fortunate, because Venus actually rules or influences the 7th house. So in itself, that's very lucky. And the Sun is only 1 degree away from Venus, but it's in the 2nd decan of the sign of Gemini, which is sub-ruled by Venus. So as you go into this month, relationships is the big theme. But I don't want to trivialize it, to be honest, because I think that is going to be out there. Jupiter's in your 7th house. It's all got to be absolutely fantastic when it comes to love relationships, because love is actually, or romance I should say, is house 5. House 7 is where we have that nip and tuck between what we want as individuals, house 1, and what we're prepared to give and receive from others. But Jupiter there could give your confidence a big boost. And if you are someone who works in a role where you interact with the public, you're customer facing, or you're involved in human resources, then this could be a time of significant growth and possibility. Because having Venus so close to the Sun through the first 2 weeks of this month suggests that charm will get you everywhere. And there is that part of you that can be quite blunt, particularly if you feel that people are blustering a little bit. But sometimes in life, it is best to approach things with a degree of care. Someone wrote under one of my videos recently, it's better to give a message coated with honey rather than vinegar, and I thought it was just absolutely brilliant. And that's really what the start of this month is about. There's an opportunity to make good connections with people, but you have to be mindful of what they need as well as what you want. And if you can reach an accord, a collaboration, a cooperation based on give and take, then definitely there is huge possibilities. But let's just consider the energy in the sign of Pisces, because that's very much about how you've been feeling about things. Saturn has brought a more sombering energy over the last year since it moved on March the 7th, 23. Neptune's been there since 212 and has created a lot of magic in that time, but also I feel some discontent, maybe some confusion or uncertainty about where to live, or there may have been the dissolving of certain emotional or family ties that weren't working. Saturn has come along in the last year and maybe have made it a little bit difficult around where you're living, either in terms of the cost or the physical environment, or perhaps it's more to do with just how you feel inside yourself. The fourth house is our inner emotional world. But as we start this month, the Moon and Neptune in Pisces are hypersensitive. But they are linking broadly with your ruler, Jupiter, in a very constructive way. If there is something that you want to articulate to someone that's more delicate, that's more sensitive, you can do so with aplomb. The one thing I would say about Jupiter, it is technically debilitated in Gemini. Why is that? Well, Jupiter's concerned with the big picture. Gemini is concerned with quick, instant exchanges. It's not so much about analysing things from a philosophical or higher spiritual viewpoint, which is Jupiter's rulership of Pisces. It's about having that buzz. You know, it really likes a lot of interaction speedily, and it's exciting, and it's essentially the sign of mixing and mingling. And there's something about what you're going to be manifesting this month that other people, particularly at the start of the month, are going to find very alluring and attractive. So if you are single, I can't promise that you're going to meet someone that's really going to be the love of your life. But if you do go out and interact with people, the chances of you connecting are definitely increased. And it could be with someone special. But we also need to be aware that Venus, through its rulership of Libra, can be very presentational. So it can be, very good at saying the right things, but actually be a bit synthetic. So that's something to be mindful of. But also, as this month begins, Mars is in the sign of Aries, which, if you really want to showcase your talents, this is going to give you a lot of extra vitality, but it's very, very close to Chiron. If it's your romantic life that you're really wanting to bring a spark to, don't cover up the wounds that you have too much. It's important to be authentic in life. And whilst, we can say the right things and create a good, positive first impression, all really important. Ultimately, it's very, very much the case that if meaningful relationships develop, it's when we're much more ourselves. But Mars will certainly give you added sex appeal for sure. But what about Mercury just coming to the end of its journey through the sign of Taurus? Well, it's very practical in that sign, but it has been cresting with Uranus, which happened towards the end of last month. So maybe all the unpredictable energy that's manifested itself since 2019 full time has created, a lot of tension, a lot of changes. Maybe at times, you would have preferred, even though you do appreciate change and a degree of excitement, there may have been times when you would have preferred things to be a bit more regular. But what Mercury and Uranus can do is create an electric connection, and in the sixth house you might suddenly see something that has been a block for you, perhaps in terms of the domestic part of your life, where suddenly there's a solution comes up. Or maybe you may read something that gives you some insights about physical ailment that you've got, and that information can come quickly but actually be very valuable. But then that takes us to that seventh house. But what's linking into the seventh house? Well, Pluto. Pluto, the planet of transformation, is in a retrograde. In the early part of September, it inverts back into Capricorn. But at the start of this month, and for 11 days, it forges a once in a lifetime for us all. The first time for 220 years that Pluto in Aquarius is linked to Jupiter in Gemini. They're both air signs. Jupiter is about the big picture, but I feel that Pluto, although it can be about things that are held secret, and it can be about the underworld and what we don't necessarily understand and know, for you it's the third house, which is more obvious communication. And I think some of your ideas and belief systems are shifting. But that could be critical in terms of how you link with another person. So if there's somebody who enters your orbit through the first part of this month, it may not just be because you find them very attractive. It could be that you have a conversation and it's a meeting of minds, or critically a meeting of philosophies. So if you're someone who's very much the type of Sagittarius who likes to protect your independence, and you like to have the flings, but really it's about making sure that you can still experiment and be fluid and independent. You could be surprised if you have that connection with someone where you really are talking into those proverbial wee small hours, and the connection can be very profound. Look out for that. Also, Mercury moves on the 3rd, joining up with Jupiter. That combination is terrific for deals. You know, if you're talking to someone about a contract, it could be phenomenally lucky. And remember, talking is what air signs do. Pluto's talking about something that's really weighty. It's not so light and airy as, say, Gemini can be, to be honest. Pluto wants to talk about something that's affecting us all in a much more interactive way. It's about us as a collective. So your ideas, which are often, you know, Sagittarians, just, I've said this before, just never fail to amaze me how much knowledge they have. So it could be your knowledge that connects you. Now, it may be around a job, it could be around an interest, it may be around a social interaction, it could be around a love attraction. But finding that connection more than just the physical allure could make it something that starts to stick around. Now, Mercury moving into the 7th house is good because Mercury in the 6th can be a bit brittle, and if your nerves have been shredded recently or you found it hard to sleep, wouldn't be a surprise, particularly towards the end of May. But once Mercury moves into the 7th house, it chills out a little bit. If someone's got a different viewpoint, okay, you see it differently. Now, you have that potential in your nature, but sometimes obviously our passions can get in the way of that. But you could be a bit more detached, but it means the flow of information between how you see things or however another person sees things or how you listen to what they're saying becomes more acutely accurate. So there's more natural energetic exchanges going on. It's just flowing. The energy is flowing beautifully, and both are linking back to Pluto. So what's being said can mean something. But Venus is pretty close, as you can see, within 1 degree of the Sun as we begin this month. The Sun's just in the 2nd decan of Gemini, which is sub-ruled by Venus. So relationships are to the fore. If you're in a relationship and you get on really well with someone, but there isn't kind of that spark of excitement, that could be something that, even if in lots of ways, you know, you have commonalities, you help each other, it's given to, it could be that for you that feels more like a friendship. If you're looking for that spark, which sometimes comes from a challenge, that might not be so much what's going to evolve at the start of this month. I think what you're going to find at the start of this month is the potential to celebrate the things we have in common rather than focus on the things that make us different. New moon on the 6th is infused by the energy of Venus. So the next month could be a time when some really critical developments occur in your connections. But then from the 5th through to the 12th, the Sun and Venus start to have a quarrel with Saturn. Remember, at the start of the month, the Moon and Neptune so close together, very, very sensitive. But Saturn being in the 4th house is seeing you learn more about saying how you feel and being okay with that. But at the same time, sometimes it's difficult to assert ourselves with Saturn in 4 because there's another part of us that doesn't want the confrontation. Now, the great thing about all those energies in Gemini, chat, 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 but the 7th house, very Libran, is that you can chat, chat, chat in a diplomatic way. But Saturn comes along and says, look, this has to really feel right. And if it doesn't, even if someone's utterly charming, and as I said, perfectly pleasant to be with, but you don't really feel there's that spark, that pash, then Saturn can flag it from the 5th to the 12th. It could bring a weak relationship, even one that's been going on for some time, to an end. If you both kind of get to the point that, yeah, we get on all right, or we don't get on all right, but either way, there's not enough for us to really go forwards with. But actually, if we do break apart, let's try to do it as pleasantly as possible. And, you know, you often hear about people who come to the end of marriages and, you know, divide up the assets, walk around the house, decide on childcare, animals, all the rest of it. And then the lawyers get involved and it all gets really unpleasant. The great thing about the seventh house is it can sort of help us to come to that accord, that more peaceful position, Venus, the planet of peace. And if that's possible, why not? But then on the 9th, Mars moves out of your 5th house, just giving you lots of sex appeal, through to the 9th, and moves into the 6th. That's very much about practicalities, the area that Uranus has been perhaps quite aggravating for you since 2019, but also pushing you to be more experimental and try different things, and also become much more aware that despite your love of freedom and the big picture and travel and being independent, actually some elements of life do need us to be applied, going through the processes and investing and being a bit more sacrificing. Mars comes along, it gives you more stamina. So you're going to feel stronger physically from the 9th, but Mars clashes with Pluto. The significance here is that the two rulers of Scorpio, which of course is a very intense sign. So what Mars does in the 6th house, in fact, it's less egotistic in a way than the 5th, which is more like a Leonian energy. In the 6th, it doesn't mind working hard, supporting others, lets go of our need to be the centre of attention. The problem is that it goes into a very intense right angle with Pluto in your sector of ideas. So you may find that even if you're wanting to pitch in and do your best, someone may have a different viewpoint on it, and that can actually really aggravate you, particularly if you have been trying to be very diplomatic about seeing into their situation. So some tensions are possible at the end of week 2 as well. But the 14th to the 16th sees Mercury and Venus come together in your opposite sign. If you do have a first date then, or on the new moon of the 6th, or on the 3rd, they're pretty brilliant times to have a first date. I just don't want to be as trite as saying you're going to meet the love of your life, because I feel it's unkind. Who knows? But it's certainly increasing your opportunities if you seize the chance to connect to people. But the connections don't have to be just romantic, remember. But the 17th sees Venus and Mercury move deep. They go into house 8. Now, Mercury in house 8 is much less concerned with what people are saying, being utterly decorous and choosing their words carefully and not wanting to upset the apple cart, keeping that sense of balance and equilibrium. Mercury in 8th wants to know what they really mean, decode it. Venus in 8th gets quite hot. It wants the sensual vibe, wants that intimacy, or it wants the loot. If you are a business person, this combination is good for you. Some fortune can come your way financially. Could be linked to someone you're very close to as well. The Sun moves on the 20th on the summer solstice into Cancer, triggering cardinal quadrant 2, the next 13-week period of the year. Cancer, of course, is very much about stability, security, our home, our emotion, our family, but how we react to things. But for you, house 8 is very transformational. It's deep, very passionate. But then on the 22nd, a full moon in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn moon is not the moon's favourite spot. It's detrimented, but it's house 2 for you, everyday money. Everyday money has to work with your longer term financial picture, but there's a lot of potential for some growth even with this full moon. The only thing to tell you about that could be a niggle is that the position of Neptune T-squares the full moon, and remember Neptune could distort. So if you're talking about a contract or buying and selling anything, make sure it's all nailed down as clear as possible. 29th, Saturn goes retrograde through 20 weeks, 15th of November, inverses 7 degrees. If you recall, moved into Pisces last March, moved up to 7, inverted back nearly to naught. It was naught, but not naught. So that 7 degrees rewind's happening again. What will it mean? Well, again, it's asking you to keep working at accepting that you're an emotional being, that we all need shelter, we all need to have a degree of stability at the root of our lives. Even if you are someone who gets a great buzz from being an international traveller or a business tycoon or someone who does some daring sports, we all have to lay our heads somewhere, and that shelter and that nurture is important to charge us up for us to go back out into that competitive environment that the world is in a way that we can deal with. So Saturn retreating there may mean some more home changes, improvements, repairs, do it yourself, maybe some changes around the family dynamic, but essentially it's continuing to get you more used to the fact that it's okay to have emotions. Because what my experience of Sagittarians is that Sagittarians have knockbacks, dust themselves down. Your natural inclination to bounce back and be positive, Jupiter, gets you going for the next exciting new target, but without working the emotional stuff out enough, which then starts to build up in you, both psychologically and physically. And that then creates a lag, which creates problems. So for Sagittarius, it's important to try and stay with the emotions and not push that away. You're like cramping your style. I need to be free. Give me space. So if you can stick with it, obviously Saturn's moving in 25 for a while into Aries before the final flourish in Pisces. But if you can stick with it, you're going to emerge from Saturn's journey through Pisces with so much wisdom and so much more rootedness at the bottom of your life that can be really, really good for you. So this is a month definitely that starts off with some gorgeous opportunities to connect with other people, but it is going to be a process that requires some give and take, sharpening up listening skills, being diplomatic, celebrating what we share in common, not just highlighting what makes us different. But if there are some emotional sticking points, Saturn will reveal them at the end of week 2. If your desire to be a bit more earnest or work in a different way with Mars moving into Taurus doesn't quite agree with someone else's viewpoint, there could be a really quite substantial clash at the end of week 2. But you can still forge some very important, you can have some very important dialogue, very important exchanges, some very flirty ones. You can meet some lovely people, but by the end of the month, it's all about the deeper part of life. It's where you're really heading, where you're transforming in a way that goes beyond words. It's really deep within you. And you're going to discover what's really going to endure from those early connections in the month, or what will make way because it wasn't right enough for you. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Sagittarius. Have a great June. If you've yet to sub to my channel, please help it grow and do so now. And please also check out my special astrology reports. If you'd like to ascend above zodiac astrology, 3 pieces of information. 2, if you don't know your time, I can tell you so much about yourself with your life roadmap report, help you to understand the patterns that you've faced in your life, but also can show how the planets are moving in the sky, interacting with your unique blueprint, and how that can help you to plan that time ahead. But also, if you know your tropical astrology well, why not check out my draconic charts, the soul, your karmic energy you bring into this world. Same package, 30% off. Please see the link below for more.